It's 9:45 in the AM on a Wednesday, and you know what that means? It's time for Java with Jen, Java with Jen and Gwen, Java with Jen, Java with Jen and Gwen. If you don't know me, my name is Jen Coken, and I'm your favorite executive leadership coach. If you are a woman in STEM or another male-saturated industry and you are interested in leading with more authority, influence, or impact, what that means for me and my clients is you feel like you can finally be yourself and stop trying to be a square peg in a round hole. Be a square peg and make the hole squarer. Okay, people? That's what we are here for. And I'm super excited to talk to my good friend Gwen Bortner because she was in STEM for a very, very long period of time. She's now has her own company, and I'm going to have her introduce herself. But we were chitty-chatting the other day about what it means to be a mentor and why that's important and some of her experiences coming up through the STEM industry. And unfortunately, some of the stats we were discussing haven't changed. So Gwen, first, could you just introduce your beautiful self to the watching and listening audience, if you don't mind?
I would be happy to. And I love that our names rhyme. How fun
Gwen
is
and
that?
Jen. Yay.
Gwen and Jen. So my background, I started the IT industry in the early 80s. It was 84 when I did my first professional programming gig for General Mills of all companies. And so I have a huge, huge history in the STEM world and was definitely often the only source of estrogen in the room for a really, really long time.
The only
and
ovary
have
in the
worked with
room. The only ovary. We might have ovaries in the Oval
exactly.
Office soon, here, friends. That's a
Yeah,
thing too. The only
that'd be
ovary in the room.
exciting.
Ovary sighting.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
I've been in that role a ton over
Yep.
the past 40 years, and so I've been in it in comfortable ways. I've been in it in uncomfortable ways. I have done all sorts of things, and although technically I am no longer actively in the STEM world in what I'm doing, I am doing my own business advisory role and whatnot. A huge percentage of those 30 years was either actively, in what would be traditional STEM or adjacent, STEM kind of things. And I remember when we in our time, when you first mentioned it, it was like, oh yeah, that makes me think about when I used to be an executive director for a nonprofit that unfortunately at this point has disbanded, but was specifically focused on helping junior high aged girls stay in the STEM, studies. We weren't even calling it
Right.
STEM back then. And how important that process was, both as, I was a president of the board, but I was also a participant in that process. And it was based on some research, which, at this point is 20 years old, but I am so confident that it's probably similar, which was the girls that were junior high aged girls coming in, I'm going to say sixth grade, were taking a standardized test. And in the math and sciences aspect, in eighth grade, were getting worse scores than they did in sixth grade. And this was a standardized test, so not grade level. And what that meant was they were unlearning science and math during those junior high years.
I feel like somebody, as they're watching, should go quick and use ChatGPT and figure that out and post it in the comments. If somebody doesn't, I will. Why did it give you the reason why young women were unlearning math and science?
And this was the research done by our executive director as part of her master's her master's degree. And what was coming out was it is the adolescence patriarchal, systemic things of, if I want to find a boy, because of course, when we're junior high, that's when all of those hormones start kicking in. I can't be better than they are at math and science, because that was the other piece, was their overall grades, their overall scores were better than the boys in math and science coming in sixth grade. And so when they got to eighth grade, they were worse. So it was the whole, to be liked, to be, to be accepted, I need to not be doing
You're not to
well at
be
math and
smarter
science.
than a boy. And I want to say too, just to make it inclusive, that's for heteronormative kind of construct
Right.
then, now a
Yeah,
very
this was
different
20 years
now.
ago. We weren't even
This
talking
right,
about
this is
this,
a
you know,
very
and
long time ago, so but I bet you, and again, I want someone to do that research, it could apply today that a young woman doesn't want to be smarter than fill in the blank, or a young binary human doesn't want to be smarter than fill in the blank because they think that isn't attractive. They used to say what boys don't make passes at girls that wear glasses. I had glasses since the age of 3, skipped a grade, graduated high school at 16. I didn't study the STEM field. I went into political science, but still often the only set of ovaries, the only estrogen in the room. And there was a peer pressure, I will say, to not appear smart. I still feel like no matter what gender somebody identifies with, for someone who's in that age range, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, where they're trying to fit in with everyone else, if you appear smart, you're a nerd, in many instances, you are looked down upon, you're frowned upon, right? For appearing to be smart,
yeah.
I think. Parents, let us know. Say something in the comments. So then let's fast forward to today and say what you do now, the work that you do now, just so folks know. I know you're in a
So now
consultancy role.
So now I work primarily with female entrepreneurs in their business operations and helping them align their true definition of success, which is actually, a lot of the work we do, of not getting caught into society's definition of success,
Yeah.
and helping them strategically align their business operations, the back end part of the business, everything that's not customer facing, to that true definition of success, which often will remove a ton of friction that they don't realize is there, and that
Yeah.
actually then allows them to make their business sustainable over
Right.
time.
Okay. All right. I love that. I just wanted to make sure people knew who you were. So back to our regular scheduled programming. So back to this notion of young humans, young women, young I'm just say young humans feeling like
Yeah.
it's not okay. But because I specifically focus on clientele of people who identify as women in STEM, in these male saturated industries, we had the situation decades ago, which I'm sure is still the same now, where standardized testing scores have gone down. There's peer pressure to not appear smart. You said something to me, and I want to ask you about this, which is it's incredibly important for women who are in that mid, upper, and executive levels of their careers to give back and to mentor these very young women so that they can find themselves filling those seats. So there is more estrogen in the room. So there are more women in the room. I don't even want to say estrogen, because some women are women by choice and they
Yeah.
don't. Right. Right. So
Yep.
I'm trying to be inclusive and not confuse myself or others. So why mentoring? Why is that so important in your mind? Because clearly
Well, and
you
so
were president of this board that focused on that.
yeah, part of what the research that our executive director discovered in her master's program was that this age bracket in particular, that junior high, 6th to 8th grade kind of age bracket, if they had a relationship with someone who was doing that kind of work, as an adult. And so it didn't have to be someone who, was in their 50s or 60s. It could be someone who was 25. It could be someone who was 30. It wasn't about an age thing. It was just that image of an adult, that if they knew someone and had a real relationship, not just kind of a passing, knowledge, but someone that they would have conversations with from time to time, and have a relationship with someone who was in that industry, they could then picture themselves there. And they were, I don't remember what the number was because this was a long time ago, but I mean, it was a significant number, like 70% more likely to continue to study their math and science options as they moved into high school.
And because
And
they
so
could see there was someone who was
they
successful.
they they could imagine it because they had a relationship, and they were able to ask questions because it was a real relationship to say. So what happened when this? How did you deal with that? What are, those
Right.
things? And so it became less daunting.
Mm,
And I it's true, I'm sure it's true with that age group, but I'm also sure it's true when you're in that corporate environment, when you've got that young person that you see potential in, that you're mentoring in that same space so that they can ask you questions and say, how did you deal with such and such? And
yeah.
sometimes I know my answer would be very poorly. Yeah,
What was that? Oh,
now
very
I
poorly.
would
You
do it
be very
differently,
poorly. Yeah.
but at that time I did it very poorly.
But that's real, right? And people can
Yeah.
learn from your experience. And I think, whether it is mentoring somebody at the 6th, 7th, or 8th grade level, or as you said, bringing it into your job, making sure there's an employee resource group for young women. There's many, like, I gave a talk at a biotech company, and it was specific for their women's group that was there. I had a
Mhm.
client back in 2019, a big tech company, and one of their keys was every month they would do fireside chats with some of the top women at the company, where they could, there might be a topic each month. And look, if you don't have that in your company, bring it to your leadership and learning department. Bring it to your HR department and say, look, I'd be interested in talk to some of your other coworkers who are also young women. Figure out, like, what would be, let's you and I brainstorm here. This will be fun. Some of the topics that you feel like would be good topics to cover if somebody were to set up fireside chats or monthly employee resource group meetings or something like that. Um, One of them might be, how'd you get there? Like, how did you move
Right.
up the corporate ladder? Might be for career
One
development.
of them is that I think is true for most women is how do you balance the I'm going to say unequal home responsibilities, even, and like, I have an amazing husband, way better than most, I'm absolutely positive, but still there is an unequal balance of home responsibilities, and we don't even have children, or I mean, like, there's a whole lot of things that aren't even part of our equation.
Right.
And but there's that that unbalance. And so, like, as you move up the ladder, how are you dealing with the additional time requirements outside of work to still allow you to do the things that you need to do at work and be present at work?
Yeah, and it could be that imbalance could be, you're taking care of aging parents, as well as could
Oh
be
yeah.
caretaking for kids, or a child with special needs, or a husband or another partner, where it falls on you. And how do you create that harmony? And this is something I see across the board between work life and home life. How do you create boundaries? Is it okay to say, I'm shutting off my phone at, I
Boundaries.
think it's yes. But as the boss, you've got to demonstrate that it's okay to shut things off at, whatever time, 5 o'clock at night, and tell your team, if I send you something, I don't expect you to answer it till tomorrow. What I started doing was scheduling things in the morning so that people wouldn't get it at night, because inevitably people would feel guilty about receiving that. Right. So I think it could
That's
be
Yeah, the
career
boundaries
development.
thing is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
So
boundaries thing is
work
huge.
life
And I think
balance, career development, boundaries. How do you navigate office politics if you feel like you're not being heard and your boss is a man? And how do you manage up? Like,
Yeah,
how do
I
you manage
totally
up?
failed that.
You totally what?
Yeah. I totally
No, what
failed
did you
the
say?
office
You
politics thing.
office politics,
I
yeah.
totally failed the office politics thing. That would
Yep.
have been one of the things, if I would have had a really good woman mentor that had done that successfully, I would have had a completely different, in my very last, and it was my last, corporate job.
Or a really good coach. The other things that I
Or a
can
really
I
good
can
coach.
think about are just some of the things that I see time and again is how do you manage up with your terrible boss? How do you make sure to feel valued in a meeting and speak up, and that your ideas are heard? Um, there was something else that I was thinking of when we were just talking about that, and I can't remember, and it was a brilliant gem. Any others come to mind for you in terms of topics?
Well, and I think just generally of, um, that balance of confidence without coming off aggressive. right? Because I think that's one of the things that a lot of women struggle with is the way they embody their confidence just comes off as aggressive and harsh. And I don't think it has to. I absolutely 100% believe it does not have to. And talking about how do we get that balance of being confident without just being someone that's like, yeah, they're always, complaining and whining and, the B word
Right.
obviously gets thrown around a ton.
And, and
How
I
do you
would say
avoid that?
right. I work with, I mean, all the things we're talking about, I work with my clients, but I want to say something specific about that, which is if you know who you are, if you have confidence in yourself, if you have taken the time to discover who you are and done the work, then you are going to feel like you have a taproot sunk deep into the ground. You're going to be aligned with who you are, and you will be being authentic, and that will be confidence that occurs natural. Now, the other side of it is if a man came across as aggressive, it wouldn't be seen as negative. It would be seen as positive. And I'll tell you, I had a recent experience. Our HOA is going through a lot of things. And we had a meeting about a situation that's happening where a roof collapsed, and we're trying to get information. And it was a whole thing around our reserve study. And there was a lot of questions. So I was trying to get some information from the president of the HOA because I could not understand why we were told it was an $80,000 special assessment, yet the contract she signed was $49,000. Okay. And I questioned her about that. And she said, well, I didn't know till a couple of days ago. And it's not like I get special compensation for being the board president. And my response was, nor should you ever. This is a labor of love. This is not something you get paid for. And I filled in her name. I said, you're not here to get accolades and you shouldn't be getting special compensation. What we simply want to know is how could you not know the amount of money when you signed your name to a contract that you are now liable for? And you can only speak one at a time. And in the chat, this man said, watch your tone. And I could hear in my head, young lady, like, how my young lady. And I simply wrote back, keep your opinions to yourself. And that was the end of it. But I don't want any woman to think they can't be direct. I think Jamie Lee Curtis said it best. She said, the older I get, I say what I mean and I mean what I say. I just never want to be mean when I say it.
So I love that. I have not heard that quote before. I love that quote.
It was an interview she did with some talk show. And I was like, man, I'm taking that home with me. I will continue to be direct and I will continue to do it with compassion. I never want to hurt somebody or impact another person that way. And I will always take responsibility for that kind of a thing. So to wrap it up here, Gwen, thank you so much for being on Java with Jen. And I think we talked about some really, really important topics, including the importance of mentoring women that are coming behind you. I think that's important to every woman I've ever coached in this industry. We came up with some topics for your monthly fireside chats or ERG meetings or whatever it is. And, the key thing I think is talk with your coworkers, talk with the other women at work, and don't be intimidated. If you are somebody who's an individual contributor, a new manager, do not be intimidated to go to your skip level manager or somebody else and say, would you mind sitting down and having a 20-minute coffee with me? I just want to know how you got to be who you are. It's both flattering as well as you and I both wish, I'll speak for both of us, had someone like that at our disposal and we didn't. Right?
Yeah.
Anything else for you, Gwen, that you didn't get to 100%. Say? Yeah. Okay, cool.
No, I love this as well.
Yay.
Coffee chat.
This has been your episode of Java with Jen and Gwen. Java with Jen, Gwen. Well, everybody, join me here live next week, Wednesdays, 9:45 on the AM dial, East Coast time. Bye. And until then, keep being great. Keep leading with authority, influence, and impact. And if you feel like you can't quite get there, I know a really good coach. Just hit me up. And I'll see you next week, friends.